Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 240 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. We have a wonderful interview today with Robert Melvin, one of our colleagues who also was a former consular officer. So I love, as you know, to get consular officers in. We get a very good viewpoint of what's going on behind the scenes to talk about their experiences in practice working at the embassies. But before we get into that, I want to remind everybody that the Immigration Lawyers Toolbox magazine is out, issue that is number 4. Robert has a great article, and they're actually talking about prepping for interview and what's involved behind the scenes. So it's a great thing to to review. Go to immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine to check that out. Definitely, you're going to really enjoy it. So many articles and pieces of information helpful for your practice. I want to thank our sponsor for the magazine and the podcast, DACAwise.com, who's always been very supportive and supports the immigration lawyers community with all the extra benefits their services provide when it comes to case creation, forms and everything, and management. You get a 10% off their annual plan by using the code Immigration Lawyers Podcast. Go to www.dacaWise.com/immigration-lawyers-podcast and input Immigration Lawyers Podcast. So you'll get that. Give it a try. Test out the material. See if you like it. I'm sure you will. I also want to thank Visa Business Plans, who's been a supporter of the magazine in particular. Visa Business Plans, Marco Scanu, we've done interviews with him where he talked about what he does behind the scenes and experience. You get to better know the company. VisaBusinessPlans.com, where you could go and check out what kind of services they have there. I do want to announce that I am going to do an Ask Me Anything. This is where you could just ask general questions of me, personal, business, all this kind of stuff. If I get 5 to 10 good questions, I'll do a separate podcast on that. So I'll pick and choose what I want to actually. It says Ask Me Anything, but I'll pick and choose what I ask and answer. So just email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com if you have some questions about business, practice, myself, anything, and we'll do a fun episode about that. If you're interested in learning about marriage immigration, you're transitioning to become an immigration attorney, I got the course for you. Email me. We have a lot of happy, satisfied students. We have office hours, everything to make sure you do your practice right. And having said all that, I'm sure I'm missing 1 or 2 more things, but I'd rather get started talking with Robert. How you doing, Robert?
Good, John. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you so much. So let's jump into it. How did you get into law, and then how did you get your career state started?
So I was a civil litigator in Texas for 12 years, right out of law school. We did a lot of commercial litigation, even did plaintiffs' malpractice suits. Just after 12 years, Dallas, I had my firm in Dallas. Dallas is one of the tougher litigation markets. I heard next to Philadelphia, it kind of trades between number 1 and 2 between the 2 jurisdictions. It's just pretty aggressive, and it's pretty intense. So after 12 years of doing that, our good friend, she grew up in the Foreign Service, back even when they had an embassy in Iran. I guess she lived there with her family. And so she was telling me about it, and she told me about the Department of State, and as many people like me that didn't know much was like, well, which state? So so I just kind of fumbled into it. But I needed a break from the intense litigation action in Dallas. So that's when I went and worked for the Department of State. And so what they do is when I started, you had to do, I think it was just 3 years, maybe 1 tour or a tour and a half, as a consular officer, no matter what your specialty was for the State Department. And so I started in Lesotho, a little town in South Africa, and went off to Pakistan after that for a year. Those are only 1-year tour because they're real dangerous. And then went to Santo Domingo and absolutely loved it, and ended up actually spending 3 years in the consular section there in Santo Domingo. And probably 2 to 2.5 of those years was being the deputy manager, basically, for the immigration visa section, and it was my best time working for state.
Let's back up. So Santo Domingo, that's a Dominican Republic, for those who are familiar.
Yeah, sorry.
What years were so how long did it take for you to get up and running to be sent out to a consulate or embassy, just going to DC and learning and stuff?
So my cone initially was management. So that's I forget, maybe 10 weeks of training or 3 months, something like that. Not a whole lot. but then when I went from Pakistan to Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic, that was the intense part of training because it was both a consular piece, which I think is maybe another 10 weeks. I'm not sure now. It varies. Just because they change, their plan on their needs for officers, and they either shorten it up and intensify it, or it was a little longer probably when I was in.
Yeah.
But then the language piece, the Spanish, that was 7 months. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So then you live in DC and they put you up in an apartment, and you just go to school. That's your job during the day. You're either learning a trade craft or you're learning a language, and then they even truck you back and forth between your apartment, and so you're kind of provided for pretty well.
What is the language course? Is it just like in high school where we take Spanish? Is it more intense or one-on-one? How does that look like?
No, it's a lot different. So I went to Texas. I grew up in Texas, in my high school years and stuff. So I took a lot of Spanish there. And there you'll learn, some vocabulary and a little bit of grammar, but it's not so intense on the speaking, and really not even intense on what I would call the like practical reading.
Yeah.
So what State Department's emphasis is speaking and reading. So you have to be able to carry on a conversation, and in a wide variety of topics like global, geopolitical issues, because they want to know if they send you to a party at the ambassador's house, if you can carry on a conversation with a minister or vice minister or something like
Yeah.
that, and promote the U.S. interests, right?
Yeah.
And then also be able to read, whether it's a magazine or a newspaper article, and it's pretty intense. I mean, it's quick. It's kind of gist reading. You're getting the gist of what the article's about. You're not going to know exactly because it's very advanced conjugation and vocabulary, so you're not going to know verbatim, but you kind of get the gist, and then be able to report back not only what it said, but also take questions, Q&A, and kind of carry on a conversation about it. So the emphasis is reading and speaking, not writing really at all.
Interesting. It's probably a lot of pressure too, because you got once you get this done. So
Wow, yeah, and it's all day. It's not like college where you got calculus in the morning and chemistry and then Spanish. It's Spanish all day.
oh boy.
So yeah,
I mean,
fast
it could be
paced.
interesting, but it's a lot of pressure, it's just too much at the same time, but it gets done, I guess. So
Yeah, and oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, so I mean, you're stationed in Pakistan as well. Were you working consular there, or were you working management stuff like that?
Now I was management. So I was an assistant to the management counselor for the whole country. So she was in charge of Islamabad, Karachi, it's one that starts with an L, I forgot the city, Lahore,
Yeah.
yeah, and Peshawar. And so we kind of managed we supported the consular section if they needed logistics or things, we provided all that for them and handled their human resources and that kind of stuff. So I wasn't really in the intricate consular business in Pakistan. So
What year was that?
gosh, that was 11 to 12. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's see. You learned what was going on in Pakistan at the time. I mean, it's always some leaders being overthrown there coming up there. But
Yeah.
did
Osama
you
bin
ever?
Laden just happened. Yeah.
Okay,
Just before I arrived.
interesting.
And then, yeah, there was a dust up in Peshawar, I believe, or Lahore with this guy, Ray something, the contractor that worked for the
Yeah, I
US.
remember. Now,
Yeah.
how often? Because that's considered like a dangerous place for an MC officer to walk around the streets. But it could be a very fun place too. Like, would you ever go
Yeah.
out, or would they? How was that private life, just getting outside the embassy with the people?
Well, it's kind of it was a joke to us. They said we don't think it's Islamabad, we think it's Islamabad, because it was kind of like the Riviera of the region.
Mhm.
Depending on the threat level, we could get out at night and stuff. If things were ticking up and getting a little more hot, we'd have to stay in our houses. At that time, we lived in the city.
Mhm.
I think now they have the compound all up and running, the new compound, so everybody's living on the same embassy grounds. But I loved it. I love the Pakistani people.
Mhm.
We constantly would go to the markets and the restaurants. And, I missed my family because it's unaccompanied. You don't have your family there with you. So that
Mhm.
was the toughest part.
Yeah.
But you get to go home like 3 times a year. So it's good.
And so after that, you went to Dominican, and then you were going on full consular at that time, right?
Yeah, that was 100% consular. And so normally, like for a consular tour, you would do one piece would be non-immigrant visas, one piece would be immigrant visas, and one piece would be American citizen services. They like to kind of hit you on all three, even if you're not a strictly consular officer.
Mhm.
But I enjoyed, I guess, because of the legal background, because it's very, I mean, as you know, statute intensive
Yeah.
and tons of law involved in the immigrant visa part. And I just enjoyed it a lot. So I got them, I kind of cut a deal and stayed in the immigrant visa section the whole time. So it was great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How busy was it? I mean, San Domingo is not probably the most busy immigrant visa place, but there's probably a lot going on there still, because there are a lot of American connections. It's so close.
Each one of the busiest. I mean,
Oh,
it's what
interesting.
they call it a visa mill. I mean, I don't know
Wow.
its ranking worldwide, but we did 40,000 immigrant visas per year. And this was
Wow.
back when I was there. Yeah, 2013 to I think we left in 17 or 18, something like that.
And
Because I also did a management tour there, so I was there a long time.
and so this is more than Dominicans, though, 'cause that probably serves as the base. People from Haiti probably go there too, I'm guessing, or do they have?
Not as much as you would think. I mean, they're a couple, but I mean, the Dominican Republic is heavy, heavy. Everybody on the island wants a visa. I mean,
Yeah.
everywhere you go, if they find you have anything to do with the embassy, I mean, just visa, 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 visa.
You know,
And
I have a colleague
yeah,
who's Dominican, and he does like so much business there. I'm like, is there that much cases going on the island that you could run a whole office with a couple of people? But that's good to know. That's a good marketing location to Dominicans. It's a big
it's
community. I didn't
huge.
realize that.
Yeah, but the majority, I would say the majority of my clients are Dominicans. I still have a lot of contacts there and,
Very cool.
kind of, yeah. And then the non-immigrant visa side of the house, I think they ran 120,000 or
Wow.
150,000
Major
a
post.
year. And then the American Citizen Services, I mean, there's so many, I forget, 250,000 dual citizens or American citizens
Yeah.
live in country or pass or routinely there. So, and 2.5 million people Americans would go through there every year back when I was there. So, COVID and everything, but I mean, it's pretty intense, very strong connection with the US. And then baseball is huge, there's
Yeah.
huge baseball.
So yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
those P's and those kind of specialty visas, I don't know, V's. What kind of
Yeah.
for immigrant visas? What were some issues that like were Dominican specific that you see with their birth certificate issues, or marriage certificate issues? What kind of stuff would you see a lot?
Well, it's an intense fraud post.
Mm,
So, I mean, that was the big thing. You're always kind of looking for fraud indicators, they call them. And so, I mean, the number one fraud indicator really is if you have relatives that live in the US. So most of the people that will commit like a visa fraud case are people that already have a lot of connections, that have a base of support in the US. So they will go there and be able to maintain a decent life.
yeah,
Yeah. So that's kind of the one of the things you look for. It's not any one particular thing,
yeah,
but there was a lot of just people had paid people to petition them and stuff. So
yeah.
you just really had to. It's a high fraud post, they call it. So there's several of those around the world. I imagine the Philippines, there's a lot of that, and
How
yeah.
like the first time you did a fraud finding, how difficult was it? Because you're looking at this person, you're like, once you make the decision, their life's over, U.S. life's over. Like how much pressure was that?
Kinda. I mean, I was pretty intense at first because you're nervous. These consular officers, number one, they don't know the language very well. You and I have talked about that before, and so and then the applicant's nervous. So then they'll get in there and they'll get nervous and start talking fast and using a lot of dichos, we call them, just like street talk slang that even a high level speaking Spanish speaker would not know what they're saying. Um, and so then that just like intensifies the mistrust. Then you're like, oh, they're trying to hide something. So you're looking,
Yeah.
looking for a ninja in every bush is what I used to say. But after you do it for a while, then you kind of get keen to, well, they're just nervous, or you have some really good indicators. One of the things that's funny in the fiance cases is he would get the photo albums, so they would have different backgrounds, but they were all wearing the same clothes all throughout the thing. And it was allegedly different, times. It was the wedding, it was the pre-wedding party, it was the honeymoon, all wearing the same clothes. And then sometimes you would see people cutting the same cake. It wasn't even a cake, it was a prop. So there's kind of an industry in those
Yeah.
countries that have a lot of fraud that kind of cater to that. So you kind of get tipped off.
Did you ever
And
notice like the same lawyers doing this kind of stuff, or like was there any of that?
well, what's weird? I mean, a lot of them weren't represented. The ones, I think there's a misconception by lawyers that maybe the embassies and stuff don't like them interfering with the case. I would say the contrary is really true, especially for somebody that knows the consular work, because they know if an attorney's involved, then that's one intense level of vetting. The attorney's not going to put their law license on the
Yeah.
line to make whatever the fee is. The fee is just not that much to risk your entire livelihood.
Yeah.
So you're going to help make sure that it's not a shaky case, or we want to push the margins, but you're not going to be doing a
Straight up
fraudulent,
fraud. Yeah. Exactly.
straight up something he knows wrong, and you're trying to get away with something. You're pushing the envelope, and really going overboard are two entirely different things. So
And
those actually the
yeah, I've
attorneys were
had
good.
cases where, like, I know they love each other, but like at the same time, I'm like, if a foreign national comes here, wants to get here, they're probably gonna be like, "Oh, America," like, and if they find something. It's like they do like each other, so I think it's a real relationship. But I'm like, there's a good chance this is not gonna work out. Like once they start living together, and they're like, "Oh, this is marriage," this is gonna be a divorce. So it's not fraud per se, but just from my experience with people, I'm like, this relationship is not gonna end well. Even, but you see that in America too, with young couples who just get married on a whim, kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's not, you're not there to determine, like, the future probability of
Yeah.
success of this marriage. You got, like you said, there's 20-year marriages that go south on a dime. But you're there to kind of determine whether it's a valid marriage.
Yeah.
Okay, so what does that mean, right? So like I said, when you first start, you're real nervous. So you're like, everything, well, he's in love, but she isn't, or she's in love, but he isn't. So that's not valid. Well, I don't know. Is that really the case? I mean, if it's real for one person, isn't it a valid marriage? I mean, everybody has competing interests, after doing it for a long time. Everybody kind of has self-interest they bring to the table. So what impressed me as like potentially fraudulent when I first started was not impressive to me when I ended. Like it's like a 60-year-old guy with a 20-year-old fiance or 20-year-old wife, and I'm like, well, he likes her because she's super attractive and she wants to go to the United States, so she likes him. Is that fraud? Nah, I mean,
It's
not.
life. It's just life. Yeah.
Everybody has a self-interest, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as cut and dry as people want to make it.
It's not
If,
the
if
Disney
it's
kind of thing.
good, sorry, if it's good for one person, to me, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah,
Yeah, I hear
yeah,
you. It's not a Disney fairy tale kind of thing. That's like rarely if ever the case. Even everywhere in the world, people get married. I mean, back in the day, and in so many parts of the world, like they have arranged marriages. So sometimes we have these. I have like Pakistani and Indian cases where the families put them together and they meet only once before they get married. Now it's not a fake relationship; it's just cultural. That's just how it is. It's a transaction. But as long as they're not paying the family to get a green card, just for it's you got to flesh that part out. So
exactly.
you're in Dominican. You loved it there. Since you left Consular, have you visited and been back there?
Oh yeah, many times, many times. In fact, I'm gonna eventually I'll open an office there. I've been um since COVID, we kind of we left state and came back here to Texas. My son's going to school. So we bought a house here, and then
Yeah.
my mom's had some health problems and my wife's mom too. So we've kind of been
Yeah.
managing a lot more things than we expected. So we've been in Texas longer. Our initial plan was to bounce back to the DR and then just hop back and forth between the Texas and DR. So that's delayed a little bit, but eventually I'll open an office down there
How
for
old is
sure.
your son? Or what grade are they?
He's 18. He's a freshman over here at Texas A&M. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
congrats. You got him to
yeah.
college.
Thank you.
I got
Yeah.
babies, so it's a long way off for me. Like that 4 and 2-year-old right now.
Wow, wow. That's cool, man. Enjoy it. It
Thank you.
doesn't
Yeah.
last long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's when I get really frustrated sometimes, I'm like, I'm gonna look back and be like, why did I get frustrated? That's number one thing I tell myself, to calm down when the kids are acting up too much.
You got to. Yeah, you got to. I mean, cherish it, man, because it goes really super quick. And then you'll have white hair like me and be like, what happened, man? When you going to college? Yeah.
So you came back to US, you started your own practice. Is that correct? So you have your own firm now?
Yeah. So I mean, I've done it before, right? We had a litigation firm in downtown Dallas, and then my partner at the time, he left. And so I opened another firm a little more out of town. And then I went virtual at the end of that deals. It was before virtual was cool, I guess, before COVID,
Yeah.
because I had a lot of institutional clients, and it was a lot of, you know, emails, telecons, and video chats back then. So this isn't my first rodeo opening a firm, which thank goodness, because you can get bogged down administratively. It can
Yeah.
be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned docket wise, that's been a blessing and a half. Man, that's just really a great application. Signed up with them right away, and that made a lot of things a lot easier. That was good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
having to use USCIS website for stuff, or just it's a nightmare, and all
Yeah.
the rest of the stuff I come with it. So
Yeah.
how I mean, civil litigation is obviously a stressful experience. You're going to war essentially every time you go and battle out. How
Every
is
time.
immigration? It's kind of nicer. I mean, sometimes you go to war with the agencies, but it's at your own turn pace if you're not doing removal defense.
Yeah. No, it's way better. I mean, because it's not necessarily adversarial.
Yeah,
Um, maybe something will go sideways, or they'll think something's strange about your case, but otherwise it's just, hey, listen, we need more information, and they don't really have a dog in the hunt.
yeah,
Straight up litigation, I've been sued personally many times, and that we would joke, if you haven't been sued, then you're just not doing your job. But this is a much better, it's much more, you feel it's more fulfilling. I think
yeah,
you're trying to help people make their lives better. You're not in an intense street fight every time you get on the phone or do an email.
yeah.
You're trying to help people, so at the end of the day, I feel good about it.
Yeah, the clients are always really happy, and the success rate is always pretty high. So that's a good thing too. So it's it's rare
Yeah.
to fail. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
keeping it clean and trying your best to try to, because people when they do on their own. I have this one case that came to us for this United for Ukraine case, and they did it
Mhm.
on their own, and they just messed it up. And we're getting these cases approved. This you have to submit an I-134. We're getting them approved by USCIS in like 2 days. It's like
Wow.
immediate. And the
Wow.
Ukrainians coming here a week later. It's like within six,
Wow.
7 days, it's done. But they came to us, so I guess 3 weeks now, nothing has happened. So we looked at their paperwork, and it was such a mess that I think
Uh-huh.
USCIS like red flagged it to research what's going on. And so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, like sometimes you feel guilty about getting money for stuff, but it's time consuming doing this stuff. But look, this
Oh
person's
yeah.
Ukrainian. They have the children's having health issues. They can't come in. If that come to us first, we could have just got this done, had the family here right now. So, but it really helps being there and help you with so much paperwork, so much stuff going on.
It's a lot. And like you said, I mean, good luck trying to figure it all out through USCIS. I mean, there's a ton of information there, and it's great, but you're not used to technically analyzing stuff and being able to follow like a rabbit trail. I mean, there's a reason I don't work on my own car, and the reason I don't give myself it's just maybe I could figure out how to do some of that, but just the amount of time and the propensity for an error is just too high.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if people want to reach out and connect with you, what's the best way? Website, email, and social media, anything like that?
Yeah, you bet. So thank you. My website is Melvin Law Group, all one word, .com, melvinlawgroup.com. And Melvin is spelled just like a US first name, M-E-L, say V de Vaca, V is in Victor, I-N, melvinlawgroup.com. My email address is robmelvin@melvinlawgroup.com. And then like I'm sure he's the same with you. The majority of my clients are Spanish speakers in Latin America, so they use WhatsApp. So we use tons of WhatsApp, and my WhatsApp number is 512-293-3023.
Awesome. Yeah, people
512.
love the WhatsApp, but the clients, and I kind of like it because I hate texting. I'm really bad at texting stuff, but clients are like, "Who WhatsApp, please?" It's like you do video thing, especially when you're dealing with like some country like Iran or something like that. It's like this Zoom won't work over there, so you got to do WhatsApp.
Yeah, no, it's so convenient. And then you can answer and ask questions at your own pace. And then if you're caught up with something else, there's a delay in the response, but you
Yeah.
have the thread and the clients are used to using it. It's a great way to communicate.
One of
So
my friends showed me you can have WhatsApp on your computer in your browser too, not just on the phone. So that helps out if you want to type that. Once I discovered like, oh, I can type stuff out, and then I forgot what website it is and I lost track, but I can get back into it.
yeah, no, I have it. I have it on the computer as well as the phone. And it's just, I'm getting old, so the eyes don't work as well. It's just a lot easier to see on the computer screen. Yeah.
Robert, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Look forward to having you on again, the magazine, the video, and just stay connected with you.
Oh, that sounds great, John. I look forward to it. Thanks for all you're doing, man. You're just your YouTube videos and all your production is great stuff, man. It's so
Okay.
helpful, and you're just a great service to the community. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And you did a great contribution to the magazine, the last issue. If everyone wants to check it out, just go to immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com/magazine. Robert's article is in there. I put it as a must read because it tells you, things to think about that people don't expect for the interview. Not just, it helps both clients and attorneys. It's really good for attorneys to know this. It helps them guide their clients and, answer the questions with more sophistication on behind the scenes kind of stuff.
It's stuff you don't think about unless you're actually in there adjudicating the
Yeah.
cases. It may be obvious if you really think it through, but unless you've done it, it just, if there's any attorneys out there that want any tips or tricks, feel free to reach out to me. I'm
Very
glad to
nice.
share what I know.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it, Robert. Say a
Yeah.
lot for talking a minute, but I'll end the show right there. Thank you all for listening. Again, I'm doing this Ask Me Anything thing. So if you have questions about me, the podcast, the practice, or anything like that, the magazine, email me and then we'll put some questions together. We'll do a fun podcast on it. Until next one, have a good one. Bye.